Well, today we'll start tearing down the motor, and we'll get started by removing the intake and the battery. And those are all in the socket. Okay, and for the intake, we just have a 10 mm and one electrical connector, and 8 mm for the clamp. Okay, now let's take off the throttle cable linkage. There's two cables here, one for the throttle and then one for the cruise control. The throttle, you can just kind of pry off to the side, like so. And then the one for the cruise control, just lift up from the bottom, and it just pops right off. And then to get these linkages out of here, you can just squeeze these together, like so. And then flip that away, and same thing here, squeeze that together, and then pull that out. Okay, next let's go ahead and remove the coil pack. You may want to label the plug wires for ease of reinstallment. However, it's pretty easy. They have it labeled on the coil pack itself with the numbers that they correspond to, and then the cylinders are numbered beginning on the passenger side from the front of the motor, 1, 2, 3, and then over to the driver's side, front, 4, 5, 6. So let's go ahead and pull these wires. Okay, I'm going to pull the main harness wire here, and it's attached by 4 bolts. These are 8 mm. There's a little keeper here we need to take off first with the throttle cable. Put that out of the way. And I just ran out of batteries. But anyway, it's just one more bolt here, and then you'll need a deep socket for this stud here. This is the one that has the keeper on it for the throttle cable. Okay, and then down here is your FM noise suppressor. And then the stud. And then here you can see the labeling. Alright, before we remove the upper intake manifold, there's a few hoses that we need to disconnect first. We got a couple here for the EGR, so we'll pull those off. And then we got the PVC down here, so let's pull that out of the valve cover. And you could disconnect this one for the vacuum brake booster here, but I just soon pull it out from the booster itself because it just frees up more area and you don't have that tube hanging in your way when you're dealing with the heads and the motor. So I'll just pull out this check valve from the brake booster and then take a piece of tape and then just cover it so no foreign material gets into that brake booster. Now, on the passenger side of the rig, we got a couple of electrical connectors here and some vacuum lines. So let's pull one of these vacuum lines off here from the upper intake. And then we got an electrical connector here for the idle air control valve. Pull that off. And then one here for throttle position sensor. Okay, we're about ready to take the upper intake manifold off. There's just one more thing that we need to disconnect. There's some EGR hardware here mounted to the intake manifold with this bracket. It's just being held on by two 10 mm bolts. So I'll just take these out. There, that's free and clear now. And then the intake manifold itself has 12 bolts holding it on. 4 of them are long bolts. Those are located up here in the higher area, and then the remainder of them are down here, and those are shorter bolts. So go ahead and take these out. It's best practice when you take these bolts off. Anything that's put onto the car and torqued in a particular sequence is the best practice is to take it off in the opposite direction, or opposite of the sequence. So normally you start near the inside and work your way out. So I'm just going to take this off, working my way outward in. Now to the back side. There. I believe that's all of them. If I got them all, they should just lift right out. And it does. Alright, and then here's the intake manifold gasket. So it looks to be in good shape because this is brand new. I just put it on. So you could probably reuse this. However, I got a brand new gasket set, so I will be putting on all new gaskets.
Okay, here before we go any further, it's a good idea to cover up the intake ports and the EGR ports with tape, just to ensure that nothing falls down into the motor. And then the next step here is to separate the wiring harness from the fuel rail. There are 4 points where it's attached, so it can just pry away on those points to free it. Okay, and then once we've pulled the wiring harness away, it provides you good access there to the electrical injector plugs, so you can unplug all the injectors at this point. And then once that's free and clear, the fuel rail is being held in with 4 bolts. There's 2 on each side. I believe they're 8 mm. Oh yeah, first we need to disconnect the fuel line, and we just use a fuel disconnect tool. This is a 5/8 inch tool here. Just slide it over the end and then push in on the fitting, and it should come apart. And always a good idea to put a towel below it because you're always going to get some leakage there. And then here's the 4 bolts that are holding the fuel rail on. So I'll just remove those 4. And then at that point, the fuel rail should be pretty much freed up, and we can just pull the whole fuel rail with the injectors attached to the fuel rail. The injectors have little keepers on the top portion of them that attach to the fuel rail, so the injector should stay intact with the fuel rail. I think that's just the easiest way to deal with it. Okay, it looks like all the bolts are out, so now we can just start gently pulling upward, up and out, until the injectors come out. And there, once they're all free, you can just lift the whole unit out and set it aside. Once all the injectors have been removed, just verify that the O-rings are still on the injector and not stuck in the port somewhere.
Alright, before we take this any further, we probably should get the car up in the air and drain some coolant. Well, while trying to drain the coolant, I had the little plastic nut break off of the coolant valve here. So I was able to put it in the extractor tool in here, and it looks like that's now biting and able to rotate this thing out. So that's going to have to get replaced. And there we go. Alright, that's about all the time I have for today, so I'll catch you in the next part.